Happy to have you all here with us today. We have a great topic. We got a good panel of people here that we're going to be talking with. I'm very excited. So, home services is a field that all of us are passionate about, especially our three guests today. In the meantime, here, while we get the introductions rolling, if you want to sound off in the chat, we'd love to see that. We love knowing where people are coming from, where you're working in, city, state, whatever you feel like. We'd love to see it. So with that, let me also go ahead and make sure I pull up our guests for today. Go. We have Rob, Phil, and Ruben. Excellent.
Good morning, everyone.
All right. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get going here. My name is Justin Smith. I'm on Balto's marketing team. Just wanted to make sure that we all understood what we're doing here today. We have a 45-minute presentation for you, give or take. We're going to spend that time, the majority of it, doing our discussion questions, have a little bit of time at the end for a Q&A, all that good stuff. If you have to leave before the webinar is over, no worries. This is being recorded, and if you've registered, we will make sure that you get a recording after the fact. If you have questions during the webinar, we ask that you put them in the Q&A section on the engagement tab. That allows us to be able to grab that. We can put them up on the screen. Everybody can participate, that kind of thing. So that would be great. And obviously, we love to see the interaction. The more, the better. If we get a lot of this stuff going here, it just helps us as much as it helps you. That way we can tailor what we're doing to your interests. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers today. With me first is Ruben Regarte. He's a general manager of home services with ActiveProspect. With over 200 installation brands within their growing portfolio, ActiveProspect has become the go-to platform for installers who are looking to scale their lead flow efficiently and safely. Ruben's focus and passion for all things marketing stems from his construction roots, where he grew up in a roofing family in Los Angeles, California. Next, we have on the call with us today Phil Bennett, the Customer Service Operations Manager with Empire Today. Empire is a customer of both Balto and ActiveProspect. So Phil's going to be able to give us that frontline viewpoint of what's happening here, both in terms of the changes that are happening in the industry and also how that can be deployed in the field itself. And finally, but certainly not least, we have Rob Westervelt, our VP of Customer Success here at Balto. He's been with us since our early days. He served both in the sales and customer success roles. And so he has great insight into both Balto's perspective on automation trends, but also the home services industry at large. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I'm glad to have you, and let's have a good discussion.
Thank you for having me. That was a great introduction. Thanks, Justin.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in, guys. So that first question we want to tackle is, what makes the home services industry unique from other sales centers when considering advancements like automation? So, Phil, I know you've got some thoughts on this. I'd love to get your take first here.
Sure. So I don't know if it's unique per se, but we tend to have a different focus in the home services industry. For instance, Empire Today's call center isn't a primarily customer service call center. It is about lead generation. Our primary role is sales. Our primary job is to set an appointment so that a sales rep can come to your house, sit down with you, and show you our product line and hopefully sell you carpet. And so it's a little different from the focus because obviously lead gen is very, very important to us. And, both inbound and outbound leads are critical, and we focus on those things.
Yeah, I would second that. In terms of any type of uniqueness, I mean, obviously as home service grows and there's bigger national brands than ever before with private equity coming in and kind of gobbling up regional brands. But the localization, I think, is still continues to be unique. Even if you're a national brand, you are still trying to be locally focused, personalized within that area. I think automation and the ability to have regional variations. Different states have different regulations. There's different customer preferences, right, from the West Coast to East Coast to Midwest, and I think that comes into play as you grow and expand beyond your region, beyond your state. And even if you're in a certain region, kind of going into pockets of that region, I think That's something that in the home service industry we've seen when it comes to automation and outreach and outbounding.
Yeah, I really like that. The couple of thoughts I had on this topic were, when I think about the home services industry, I think there's a lot of competition, right?
Yeah.
Obviously every
Yep.
industry has competition, but it seems like home services, there's so much competition, and it's a matter of like who can really get in that door, right? Because if you get in the door, that's the thing, right? That's when you should be closing them pretty well. So a lot of competition, and also, through automation, you have a way of starting to control margins a little bit and hold on margins. And again, in such a competitive landscape and in an environment where, materials just pretty consistently get more expensive. I was thinking that, automation's a way to help keep margins in such a competitive space. I also, the other piece is like, when I think about home services and the overall like contact center in that space, there are some tasks that can be automated, and that's going to allow the agents to just, first of all, like quality of life type stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like they don't have to do the mundane tasks anymore
Oh,
because
absolutely.
we've got automation to do that. Right now, every time they're on a call, it's a really good conversation. They're fighting for an appointment or overcoming objections or whatever it is, and they don't have to worry about, the mundane tasks of, filling out a form or something, or asking the questions to get it done. So those were the two that
Yeah.
I thought of.
I'll just touch, and Phil, I'd love to hear kind of riff on this, since this is kind of your jam. But I think the big difference in home services is the personalization and trust that goes into the call center experience. You have other products, other industries where you can be on a phone, press 1, know that you're talking to a robot, press 2, and get your package or whatever it is that you're doing. In home services, like you just mentioned, you're literally having somebody come to your house, which is so private. You're having someone come into your home. They're putting your feet on your rug, and they're coming into your house. And I think that's a very personal thing. I think there's a lot of trust and understanding that needs to happen. Yeah, I need to get my HVAC fixed, or I need to get my flooring in, or I need to get a new roof. But man, I can't just let anybody in the home where my wife and children are. So I think there's a personalization thing that's very unique to the home service sector.
Yeah, that's actually really a good point. And I don't know if any of you, I had the joy and fortune of starting my sales career and as an in-home sales rep. And so there's no question that is certainly something that the customer is always a little bit standoffish about somewhat. And the sales rep is, you're in an unfamiliar environment, especially when you're going in to sell. And, it every single time it's a different environment. And so that's really interesting as well. But the other thing is, and Rob mentioned this, the idea of using technology to reduce the margin of cost and things like that. It's really critical. And one of the things that I've found as technology has advanced is that you really can leverage a lot of this technology to bring a better experience to customers and deliver it at a lower cost. My first role was at an online brokerage firm. And we actually used to leverage chat to provide an almost full service experience as far as the customer service experience goes. Because you can use chat and you can have one agent handling 3, 4, 5, maybe more customers at the same time. And so it's much more efficient and much more cost effective to deliver that full service when you can't really deliver that as much over the phone. And so, that is an issue that we are dealing with. Never mind. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Contact's
honestly,
blowing up, unfortunately.
Oh, hey. I think that dovetails really nicely with this next question is like, are automation and agent empowerment at odds or if not, how do they support each other? I feel like this speaks a lot to like what you were just talking about, this idea that like so much of the home services industry is very much that idea of like I'm showing up as a person to talk to you, and you have to build that trust and that very personal relationship. But meanwhile, there's a whole host of stuff happening in the background that we are seeing these big advances in technology and especially automation. So how do these two fit together? Do they butt heads? How do they support? What do you guys think?
Well,
You want to take
they
the
have.
first, Phil?
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no,
I was going to say, I don't think that they're at odds. I think they work together, and I think this is the real key that we've got to look towards the future. I know that there are a lot of analysts out there saying, "Oh, we're going to replace all of our agents with bots." No, we're going to replace a lot of mundane things, which you pointed out, the things that kind of don't really help the agent much to take the
Yeah.
call. Doesn't really benefit the customer to actually talk to a live agent about, because it's transactional in nature. But the other side of that coin is making sure that the agent, who now has to be prepared for the much more complex call that's going to come to them, will need tools like AI and automation that will help them. So tools like Balto to guide the agent through the call so that they can focus more on providing empathy, which is something that AI does not do well. Maybe someday we can convince people of that. But the fact of the matter is, it's always going to be a machine you're talking to, and it's always going to be kind of hard to buy the "I'm sorry you're having that problem," that sort of thing. That's not helpful to the customer. But if you can take the low hanging fruit off the plate and then provide the automation, and it's interesting because it's a very white glove, face to face business, and it's one of those things that you, all of these things go on in the backside. You really don't see them because it is so face to face, but everything has to work very, very well. And so having the tools like that, other tools like call summary, or the ability to have the AI open the tickets and handle those, that's going to allow the customer or the agent to just focus on the customer and just deliver the best experience they can have.
Yeah, in terms of the automation and agent empowerment, I completely agree. As you see the growth of larger home service brands who have 20, 30 agents, who grow into 50 to 80, who grow into hundreds of agents at the call center level, from both outbounding on leads to inbound customer service and everything in between. The rise of automation helps to compress the time that a lot of these agents have. I've always thought of call center agents as, you can be great at your job, you can be great at kind of connecting with people, but if you don't have the right tools around you, it's going to be harder to support the volume that you need. And when I say tools, I mean the ability for a lead to come in. For instance, with ActiveProspect, we have a lot of clients who, between the time that the lead is generated, the client is inquiring, "Hey, I'm interested in flooring, interested in roofing," to the time it hits the CRM or their call center, they're appending a bunch of data and verifying information, such as how long you've lived at the home, the square footage of your house, is your IP address in the same location. A lot of brands do reverse phone lookups. There's all types of verification appending that can auto-populate into the CRM that minimizes a lot of questions that sometimes call center reps have to ask, because they're not asking those questions or taking time in their dialogue to do that. Now they have more times to connect. They have more time to listen. I would also say that the ability to have a full feedback loop with the rise of CRM, cloud-based computing, SaaS software like ours, like yours, the ability for brands to capture conversations, to catalog them, to have disposition data from conversations they had a year ago that they can bring up very quickly. All that type of technology is gives agents superpowers if the technology works the right way and translates from that original lead, "I'm interested," to all the way to the installation side, which, depending on what type of trade you're doing, can be, I call you on Monday, you're installing on Tuesday, or I call you on Monday and you're installing in 45 days due to the utility, and solar. So there's all types of different processes. And I feel like automation is finally front and center for the home service industry.
Yeah. I think the thing I thought of on this one is they're at odds if you're doing it wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, if you find that automation and agents are at odds, it's because you're going about it the wrong way. You're trying to over automate, and there's a lot of that right now, right? Like everybody's like, we can automate all this stuff. And yes, some things you should automate, but I think Phil touched on it really well. Like, you should allow this to level up the agents in your contact center, right? So that now they are experts in certain things, and they get to learn that when they're having conversations, they are very valuable conversations that require some level of human aspect. To your point earlier too, Ruben, like the personalization of it, right? Like, before I'm going to step foot in your home, I want you to feel comfortable with me, not just that you scheduled time via an IVA or something, and it's just someone showing up. I want to know that like I can trust this company before allowing you in the door. So I really think it's like, allow it to make the agents like superheroes on the phone, right? And then
one thing that we're hearing from a lot of brands. So at ActiveProspect, we service around 200 installers nationwide, large brands like Empire Today, which Phil and the team have been clients for over 10 years, and brands like ADT and Leave Home and others. A lot of brands at the major call center level, they got stuff dialed in. They're focused on high level lead scoring. How do I get this lead that has this score in this region to the agent who's going to have the most empathy? Because now they have technology. We have technology that allows you to route that lead to an agent that's going to have the highest propensity. And then that agent can then route it to the salesperson that has the highest propensity and the shortest kind of drive distance. And so there's all these analytics that are empowering the home service side that I feel have been being used in the financial service sector, mortgage sector, CPG sector for decades. The home service industry is finally coming around to technology is front and center. The top of the funnel is the most important. Show me any brand out there that's growing revenue upwards into the 50, 100 million. You're going to see a call center culture that is growing, that has automation, that has technology front and center.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil, it looks like you're muted on this side here. So we'll grab you here in a minute. But with that does actually go into our next question, which is specific examples of how automation is saving time for agents. Ruben, you were just touching on that. If you want to keep going with that thought process,
absolutely.
Hey, Phil,
hear me now? Hey, there I am. So sorry about that. This has been an adventure here today.
Yes, certainly.
I apologize for the technology issues I'm having.
We should let the audience know that Phil is on a Cessna traveling to Aruba right now and is having some Wi-Fi issues.
It feels that way.
In terms of the automation for agents, like I mentioned before, quick backstory. I've been with our company for 5 years. Prior to coming here to ActiveProspect, I was a client of ActiveProspect. So I ran a call center and a media purchasing arm for a really large residential solar company that was about 150 million. We had 80 agents. We were buying about 20,000 leads from 50 different sources. And when I found out that you can, in real time, before getting a lead into your CRM, check to see if it's in your zips, if it's a duplicate, if it's compliant, if it's a bot. Like, when I found that out, that blew my mind. And that was 10 years ago. To this day, we are still finding softwares like ours, not just ours, but others in the SMS and Balto and others that are really creating this fast track where if you can plug and give the ability for this lead to come in and have the right talk track, you can supercharge an agent who maybe historically could get 5 or 10 appointments a day, which is a lot, right, for an appointment setter. Now they can be supercharged and double that. And so now you're able to compress the time of that agent. You're able to supercharge their ability. And then also the follow-up that goes, okay, and I'm sending you the appointment. You're looking for me to come to your home on Wednesday. You're sending an SMS to the consumer. You're sending a photo of the sales rep who's coming. You're giving them a video. Like, there's all these things that are happening. And I know, Phil, you've gone through this. I remember being in the call center when we had a discussion with our leadership team of like, should we be texting people? Like, is that the right thing to do? Like, are people going to be?
Yeah.
And it was like a big thing to go from calling people to texting them. And now 5, 6, 7 years later, it's like, people don't want you to call them. We have to text them. And it's not just an SMS, text. It's now visual, video. So there's all this change. And I feel like this is a great conversation because with AI coming, there's so much information coming our way. But to kind of take it back, it's still the human element. You still have to have the right sales training, the right sales culture and call center culture.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, everything else is just kind of stage presence or special effects. I mean, the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, it's about connecting with people, but it's about making the journey as pleasant as possible. Because, I mean, these are big decisions that you have to make when you do it, and so you absolutely want to feel like you're working with a trusted consultant rather than someone who's just trying to sell you whatever it is they're trying to sell you, and that's really, really critical. And then the other thing is making sure, and here's the interesting thing: we're even starting to pair our sales reps up with tools that are very, very similar to what Balto does in the call center. And it will provide not only a recording of the contact, which, believe it or not, customers actually prefer, but it also provides something that we can go back afterwards and analyze and break it down. And if you've ever been in the sales field where you go into someone's house, or the problem is you never remember things in the moment. It's, oh, I should have said this. That's the first thing you think when you left. I should have said this, or I should have said that. But the other thing is, the next morning, or the next day, you're trying to break it down and go through it, and it's very difficult to remember exactly what was said. And so,
Right.
having a transcript of that not only protects the customer and the sales rep, because there's no question that, again, you don't necessarily know what you're walking into. But it also provides us the ability to help make their presentation better, more customer friendly, and in ways that are going to improve the experience for for all of our customers as a whole.
Yeah. And for the agents and for even those in-home salespeople, right? Like, the coaching that they can now get. Like, I can't even imagine trying to coach an in-person sales rep without something like that, right? Because, like, maybe you do a ride along and everything, and I don't know, every ride along I've ever had in my life, whether I was a manager or the rep, it was like the worst possible
Oh, it's
call to
awkward.
be on, right? So the coaching, you're like, of course my manager's on this one, I did terrible. So,
Yeah.
the ability to really look at every interaction and see what's going well and what's not, and at scale too, right? Because the other piece is like, do we have a problem in our entire contact center that we need to address, or with one
Yeah.
agent, do we have
Yeah.
something we want to look at? I think the biggest, as it relates to time savings for the agents, I think, there's two ends of the spectrum that I see here. It's basically like beginning of the call and end of the call, right? Beginning of the call meaning like,
Yeah.
can we automate the collection of some of that data, right? Like name,
Correct.
phone number, email, square footage of the house, whatever it is. Can we get all that out of the way so that now the agent is having a meaningful conversation about, what are you thinking for a preferred type of floor, right? What room are we talking about? I see it's a kitchen. Maybe we're talking about this. Do you prefer tile, or would you prefer like a luxury vinyl? Like, where are you at on that front, right? It's a much more real conversation. And then on the after call side, it's agents spend so much time. You pay them to, set appointments and make sales, right? So, when they're sitting there and they're trying to remember everything they just went through with that person, whether they're doing it while they're on the call, so they're not really focused on the conversation as much as they should be, or if they're doing it after the call, and Phil, like you said, you're trying to remember everything that just occurred on that call and jot it down and then get it into your CRM, you're going to miss stuff. You're going to take
Yep.
too much time. And it's like, how can, and for the agents, like, I want to get back on the phone. I want to get another appointment set. I want to make money, right? Like, get me back out there. So if we can automate that and allow the after call work to go down from, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes to, 1, 2 minutes, then they're back on the call and they're doubling their productivity in a given day, and they're hitting their bonuses and getting commission, and everybody's happy. So it's kind of like beginning of the call, end of the call, and the meat is like, let's let that agent do what they do best.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's no question about that. The other thing, I mean, one of the tools that has recently been developed, we've had call transcription for a while, but the ability to summarize the call really makes a huge difference, because putting a transcript of a phone call into a record in your CRM, it just takes up and wastes space, because the agent doesn't have time to read through the pleasantries, the greeting, the kind of the warm up stuff. They just want to know why the customer called, and how to follow up with them when they look in the CRM, and that's really critical. Another area that people tend to forget: call centers have tremendous turnover, very, very high turnover. And one of the biggest areas that a lot of this automation has helped us with is that we have been, it has reduced training time. And that is a huge thing, because when you put an agent out on the floor, you are saying, I am willing to understand that the proficiency is not there yet, that this agent doesn't know everything. And so there is a gap between when we put them on the floor and when they actually do know how to answer all the customers' questions. That is something that people in the call center industry have to deal with all the time, because
Yeah.
you're not delivering your best service. And let me tell you, AI and automation can really help cut that down, and get them on the floor faster and make them proficient much faster.
And I'm just going to ask both Phil, and then maybe in the chat section we can have some of the attendees throw in the number. But Phil, how many call center agents does Empire today have? How many are you supporting? Give us some context.
So right now we have about 100. Normally we would have about 150, and that's just seasonal and time of year. It's election years tend to be difficult, especially in home services, because it's a discretionary spend, and it's not. It has nothing to do with who wins the election, except for the fact that there's two economic visions that you have, and we used to see this in the brokerage industry a lot too. People would hold off making these big changes in their investment until they knew which way the country was going to go, because and the same thing happens with discretionary spending. So right now we only have about 100 agents, but we will be probably up to 150 by February or March of next year. And as you can imagine, bringing all those agents to the floor, that's going to be tricky to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Phil, you mentioned transcripts into a CRM.
Yep.
And you gave me such PTSD. When early on at Balto, it was something that we would get that request all the time. Can we get the transcript of this call into our CRM? And I'd always have to tell people, have you ever seen a transcript of just a 5-minute call? Because you don't want to.
Yeah,
Like,
it's long.
It's not valuable to just have the full transcript. I mean, if you pipe it into something else and you do a bunch of other stuff on top of it, sure, you can get value out of it, but just a full transcript into a CRM these days just does not make sense.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like you guys are teeing these up so well. Um, so when we talk about, training these agents, and as far as getting them
Yeah.
out there, I feel like we already know a little bit of where we're going to go with this answer, but the discussion is still worthwhile. How important is it to have training agents alongside these automated systems? I think I think we've covered a lot of like what the immediate benefit is of automated system to agents, but in terms of getting them familiar with it now, maybe that's a generational thing. Maybe that is a um, just in, I guess I'm curious as far as like what does that even change the landscape of how we structure these training systems?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one first. So I've been in the home service industry for 15 years. My family owns a roofing company in Los Angeles where somebody would call in, I'd pick up the phone, be like, oh, you need a roof? Okay, great. You're in Pasadena? Be over there in 1 hour. And that was kind of the call center. All the way to an 80-person call center where we had 50 sales reps, and every day, we had 150 appointments a day running for solar in California, Nevada. I feel one of the big things that I'm seeing, and I'll share, is large brands who have large call centers, a lot of overhead. Historically, it would be the IT technical team implementing some IT or upgrade or dialer or CRM or some type of technology, and then kind of training the sales culture as they go along. More and more than ever before, that's not happening. Home service brands are getting sophisticated. They're bringing in CTOs. They're bringing in information directors. They're being more strategic with who's running the call center. It's no longer this call center director who's kind of out there and like, rah, rah, rah. It is now a very analytical process. They are working hand in hand to implement technologies and have training alongside that, rather than, hey guys, we're flipping the switch. Let us know if you have any problems, which I've been part of call centers where that's the game. Now more than ever, the compression, and I keep on using that word a lot, the ability to streamline different changes, different techs, and to implement and to not have it slow down any of the horsepower, any of the momentum that you have. And a lot of times in home services, brands would put off implementing that CRM, that dialer, that SMS tech, because they're like, man, I don't want to go through that, bell curve of that issue. And so I see more and more brands really coming to the forefront with leaders who are technology focused. They have battle plans, wireframes, and they're putting training in place that go alongside that integration or kickoff.
Yeah, I think to answer this question here, like, how important is it? It's probably one of the most important things you could do right now.
Yep.
Right, like,
It's critical.
Automated systems, they're definitely going to be here. They already are, and they can add so much value to your business. And if you're an agent, then if the company's not doing it, I would do it myself, right? Like, what a way for me to set myself apart from the rest of the group, to go out and just mess with ChatGPT and kind of just get to know these different things that are out there and how to use them. Because if my company does it, I'm an expert, and now I'm the expert, and I'm ahead of the curve, right? So I think that, like, you have to do it. You have to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Phil, what kind of
Sorry,
training
go
do
ahead.
you have at Empire today? I'm curious. Like, how do you give us a kind of high level structure there?
Well, the thing is this, I mean, what you're going to get is you're going to get some product information, but mostly how to work with the systems, including the automation systems. And that's really critical, because not only do agents need to know how to work with the systems, they need to understand how the systems work, just in case. I mean, because there are always things, as we know today, there are always things that can go wrong with modern technology. But I mean, so understanding what you're trying to accomplish is really important. But the other point that was just made is even more critical. A lot of people are worried about being displaced by automation in the call center. And the fact of the matter is the best thing they can do is learn AI, not necessarily, how to code AI or anything like that. I don't know how to code AI, but I've spent the last probably 15 or 20 years, because the first generative AI I ever saw was called Smarter Child in 2004, and trying to figure out how we're going to stand this up and deploy it, where the best places to deploy these sort of tools are. Because believe it or not, there's lots of people who know the X's and O's and the binary code and that sort of thing. There's far fewer people talking about how do we deploy this? Where is it appropriate? What is the best way to get value back out of it? And the other critical piece is going to obviously be analytical tools for things like that. But if you can get on the bandwagon now, and mess around with Chat GPT, make sure you're not doing anything that violates your company's, privacy policies. But other than that, I mean, learn what it can do and how it can interact and get a feel for it. It's the problem is a lot of people believe that AI is going to be this magic tool that we're just going to turn on and walk away from. And nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, not only do you have to train your agents how to use the tools, but we're going to be training IVAs. And a lot of those agents who know their job really, really well are going to end up coming back and being the people that are going to train those IVAs. And that's a tremendously valuable skill to have going forward.
Yeah, I'll just finish off. I've been, as part of my role in traveling call centers all over the U.S., and along with what we're talking about, the automation within the lead flow, whether it's ActiveProspect, whether it's Balto, whether it's CRMs or whatnot, the ability to have that culture. There's call centers where I go in, man, it's a party. It is a party. People are setting appointments. People are winning prizes. There's a phenomenal lunchroom. If they hit a certain number, people are bringing in lunch. So that's one side of it. The other side is, hey, this is your job. You got to make calls and you got to set appointments culture. And you want to keep your seat. And to what Phil mentioned earlier, a lot of turnover. The brands who are growing and killing it have this amazing culture of where someone who's a call center agent is getting up super enthusiastic to go to their job because, man, they're going to put that headset on. They're going to set a lot of appointments for this window company, this flooring company, this solar company, and they're making a living and they're so happy to talk to people versus a culture where, you're like, man, I got to make these calls. And so there's a big difference. I think automation can supercharge that. But once again, the culture to go along with that automation, that's where you're really getting dialed in.
That's perfect. Okay, we have about 8 minutes left or so. I want to move into a Q&A section. For any of our attendees here, again, make sure you drop those questions into the chat in the Q&A section so we can pop those up. I want to kick this off actually with a question that I had myself when we were talking earlier. Ruben, one of the things that you had mentioned, and Phil, I believe you chimed in on as well, is like the transition from having these IT groups, like they're the ones who are guiding a lot of the implementing new technology. And then over time that has transitioned. One of the things that I was surprised. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Where'd Phil go?
He must have landed. He must have landed the plane.
I'm back. Sorry about that, guys.
Not at all. I was asking, one of the things that I was surprised to hear recently, and Rob, I think you can attest to this as well, is at least within Balto, we are seeing more of an increase of that IT department, again, having more of a role in implementing AI into their companies, where they're the ones who are guiding this. Is like, okay, here's this new tech. We need to be the ones to steward this.
Okay.
Is that something that you guys are seeing as well? And if so, like, does that backtrack some of that progress, or is that just continuing to build that relationship going forward?
I'll take the first stab at this. In terms of AI, everybody's talking about it. Every conference I go to, there's a panel. Hey, I even did a panel on AI in the call center at Lead Gen World earlier this year. What I'm seeing is a lot of discussion. And I think the first stage of where I'm seeing AI is in SMS outreach. There's a number of different SMS providers out there that are, really focused on that. And that kind of makes sense because you're text messaging. We're also seeing a lot of AI SMS and kind of what we talked about, transcribing. Here at ActiveProspect, we use a technology called Gong, which transcribes every conversation and then kind of like highlights it almost like in a cliff notes. Man, that thing is super important and helps me compress a lot of time. And so we're seeing a lot of discussion. I don't and have not come across an installer or a call center director or marketing manager that's like, man, we just implemented a full stack of AI and like we're killing it. It's more like we're trying this. We know it's going there. How can I learn more? And that's what I'm seeing and hearing.
So I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to be slightly controversial, maybe, and I'm not pointing my fingers at any IT departments anywhere. But one of the problems that I've noticed, especially around the call center, is that a lot of people in IT departments believe they know what goes on in a call center. And unfortunately, that very rarely is the case. And one of the reasons that I've been able to really position myself at Empire is because I've been in the call center space, but now I bring in these technologies. And the real reason is, I've worked with call center or with IT departments who've built communications platforms that only work in one direction, telling the customer. If the customer responds on the platform, it doesn't go anywhere. The customer just gets back an error message. So it's like who do we get to build out the and design the conversation flow? Well, I hear a lot of people say, well, we should have the marketing department do that because they talk to customers all the time. Actually, that's not true. They talk at customers, and that's their job. Their job is to talk to large groups of people and create an interest into talking to the customer service or sales rep who is versed with talking with customers. And so it's a very different role. And so hopefully we can control this in the call center. I know Mark just had a great webinar where he was talking about how, or a post on LinkedIn where he's talking about how we have to be the ones to take ownership of this because we're the ones who ultimately are talking with the customer, and we're the ones who are ultimately going to get this integrated into the call centers. And so, IT can go out and they can buy a nice fancy platform, but unless you have people in the call center space who go, okay, well, can it do this? Or will I be able to do that with it? Which the IT people really don't know about because they're focused on what they do, not necessarily on what we do. So you really need someone who does focus on what we do to be a champion or an advocate to make sure that they're developing and delivering the best service or the best experience for the customer and for the agents and for the entire company. And then everybody can win.
Yeah. And then to just add real quick, the accountability between your call center director, someone like a Phil, and that IT team. And you guys are all in together. Accountability through that transition. And it's not just, hey, we got this thing up and running and now we're good. Accountability on the software side, who you're working with, that onboarding team. I mean, I can't tell you how many disasters I've seen with dialer integrations and CRM integrations. And kind of going back to what I said earlier, everyone's always trying to avoid that transition when they should be running to it. And so completely agree, Phil.
Yeah. The only piece I'll add to that is I wonder if, seeing more and more of the IT department being involved is speaking to the, maturation of the technologies in the space, right? Like,
Huge. Yeah.
Years ago, it was like different business units would say, you know what, we're going to get some AI here. We're going to buy this software here.
Wow.
Not really a big deal. It wasn't too ingrained in anything. Now it's the AI is ingrained in the CRM and the dialer and, whatever else, our email platform. It's so connected to everything that I think that's
Yeah,
probably why we're seeing IT more involved, is because it does just need to be at the heart of everything that goes on.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably why we're seeing more of it.
absolutely.
We have time for one more quick question here. And Ruben, I imagine that you are going to want to tackle this guy here.
Bring it.
Come January and one-to-one consent, how,
Ooh.
if at all, is AI tech going to help companies stay compliant and productive?
So just to preface, the one-to-one consent for all those here on the call is a new law that the FCC has put into place that is closing the lead generation loophole. It is going to mandate that when a consumer goes on a web form, that instead of just punching in their phone number and their address and then clicking a box that allows that lead or that information, their information, to be sent to a bunch of different people, that ultimately they have to select the consent for each company that they want. So if they want windows, they got this window company, I'm consenting to them. I'm consenting to this window company, and I'm consenting to this window company. Now, all three of those brands have consent. So that's what's called one-to-one. In terms of AI, I think it's not AI, but our technology helps to scan every lead. So every lead that you purchase today can be what's called page scan, which means that you can scan the disclosure on that lead in real time before purchasing the lead and accepting it into your CRM. In terms of AI, to be determined. I am not going to sit here and say, man, there's all this tech and it's going to solve this, solve that. I think the entire lead generation space is trying to figure out, how do we service these consumers with this new law. It's not like eyeballs are going to go down. It's not like people are not going to be interested in Windows doors. The same consumers and growing are going to continue to be looking for installers in their region for that trade. How those installers receive that information digitally and how they outbound, the compliance around that continues to go up. And this is a federal regulation. And I think the big worry right now is, hey, I'm buying 10, 20, 30,000 leads a month. How is that going to change? Am I going to drop my volume in half? And if that drops my volume in half, does that mean that my revenue is going to drop? And so there's a lot of trying to understand that and hedging going on. We are predicting in the ActiveProspect world that we'll see a 20% drop in lead volume in Q1 and in Q2. But like everything in technology and like everything in our business, we're all going to figure it out. There's going to be some changes. There's going to be some moving. But like everything that has happened in our industry and in technology, we're all going to figure it out. I think there's going to be a lot of lead generation brands coming into the space that weren't in it before. But I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I think for the brands who are connecting all their technology, who have a full lead funnel, who have a bullpen of lead providers, and who have understood that being compliant is important for years, I think those brands are going to skyrocket. And the ones who are just figuring out what TCPA means, man, you got some learning to do. So that's my take.
Oh God. Yeah, this is the bane of all of our existence, especially anytime you're following up with leads. And the biggest issue that I believe we're facing, and technology will solve this eventually. The problem is that infrastructure isn't in place right now. Is how do we prove? Because we are going to have to be able to prove that we have one-to-one consent for these leads and that they're compliant with the new law. And there's no way to really know or be able. I mean, right now there's no attestation we can show. I mean, all of these things it's very similar to stir shaken. Stir shaken's a great idea. Unfortunately, it doesn't work because of all the politics and everything else that goes on. So you can have an attestation from stir shaken and still have your call blocked by a carrier because. So I mean, it's going to take organizations in the space like Reach who are defining these things, but there's got to be a way that we can automate this so that we can show it.
I would also just add in the essence of what the FCC and the compliance, the what they're attempting, the spirit of it is to reduce robocalls, reduce all these outbound calls that we all have had. We've all hated. No one loves getting a cold call right at 8 o'clock at night when you're at the dinner table. We as consumers have gone into the space where we put our information in. Nobody reads the little disclaimer. I mean, who's reading that? Maybe some. Most of the time, you're just like, man, I want to get some shoes. Yeah, call me.
Click.
Or I'm interested in roofing. Call me. And a lot of these forms are lead generation forms that then sell and have a business model to sell that lead to multiple different people. From the installer perspective, if you're an installer buying a multi-sell lead, you're subsidizing your costs with your competitor. Your competitor's getting that lead, and probably two of your competitors in the same region are getting it, but they're subsidizing your lead costs. So instead of you paying $200 a lead, you're paying $50 or $75. I think along with what the FCC is doing to try to limit the outbounding and the selling of consumer data, I think the FCC and we also need to go after professional litigators. If you're a professional litigator and your whole essence of waking up is to sue construction companies and to falsify putting your name in a
We
web
shouldn't
form,
laugh about that. It is absolutely correct.
there should be a law where you as should be they need to limit the litigators that are getting into this field, that are preying on awesome companies like Empire Today and probably a bunch of companies that we have as attendees. That needs to change as well. So there's two sides to this, and I think we're only focused on that one portion, which is important, but there also needs to be some type of regulation around these serial litigators that are out there.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we are a little bit over time here. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much to everybody in attendance today. I really appreciate you being here. I know Rob, Ruben, and Phil appreciate it as well. For the three of you, thank you so much for being on with us and having this discussion. This was fantastic. Hopefully, we got a lot of good stuff out of this. If you'd like to see more from Balto, you can scan the QR code there and schedule a 30-minute interview with one of our account executives. If you'd like to just stay in the loop of what we've been talking about, you can scan that other QR code there to get some updates from us as well. Ruben, I saw that you dropped your email in there. Make sure you reach out to him, and he had his LinkedIn earlier up there if you want to reach out and connect. For myself and for Rob, we are also there on LinkedIn. Phil is available on LinkedIn. We're all around.
Yep.
We'd love to connect and get to know everybody. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Ruben, Phil, thank you.
Guys.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Phil, have a good time in Aruba.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I will.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. See you later.
You too. Bye.